Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Central Pennsylvania Shrimp Tank, brought to you live from our studio here in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania, the great, vast metropolis of Dillsburg. I'm your host today, Nathan and Bowden. I'm riding solo because you can see we have a full panel. And here on the Central PA Shrimp Tank, we have the privilege of being able to bring in some of the best and brightest business owners and leaders from the Central Pennsylvania region to talk all things business. Normally, we interview places about how they started, grow, and are running their successful organizations. But today, we're continuing in our mini-series called our Business Enhancement Series, and we're focusing on cybersecurity. And we have some great experts, which I'll introduce here in a minute. But before I do, just as a reminder, you can catch a full replay of every broadcast we do on our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Central PA. Also, if you're catching this live on Facebook, be sure to like our page. You can search for us at the Central PA Shrimp Tank. Click that follow button so you can stay up to date on all the interviews we get to do. If you like this video, like it, share it, push it out, because we're going to be pushing some valuable information to you. And we have a newly minted, right, Joy, Instagram page, which I am just the king at. All I do is Graham. So you can find, again, good reference, instantly, yeah. Look for the Central PA Shrimp Tank on Instagram to stay tuned for, again, updates and blogs and information that we push out. So, again, today I mentioned we are going to be doing a special on cybersecurity, and we have two experts here in our region, in our backyard in Central Pennsylvania, the representatives from Appalachia Technology. So we have right to my right, we have Jason McNew and Brian Stone, who are from Appalachia Technologies. And then to our farthest right, we have John Sancenito, who is part of Information Network Associates Incorporated. And so I'm going to stop talking because this is all about you guys and your expertise in cybersecurity. So before we jump in, Brian, maybe why don't you give our viewers a little bit of a background on Appalachia, what you guys do, and then John will have you do the same for INA.
Sure. Hi there. Appalachia Technologies, we started in 2004. We were predominantly in IT consulting practice, and over the years we've migrated into managed services, and most recently, the last 5 or 6 years, is cybersecurity and managed security services.
And you really carved that out as a strong niche of one of your differentiators in dealing in the IT space, correct?
Right. We do. There are a lot of IT providers, but you can't really protect a business today unless you're focused on the cybersecurity aspect. A lot of the other things are just table stakes, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Jason, what's your role with Appalachia and how do you fit in with cybersecurity?
I was recently brought on with Appalachia. I'd originally started my own company in 2017, which was called Stronghold Cybersecurity. And Stronghold Cybersecurity was started basically literally from nothing whatsoever. And we pretty quickly got into working with defense industrial-based contractors who need to comply with security frameworks for the federal government. And I started partnering with Appalachia an awful lot of my projects and found that their expertise and their engineers and their product stack was a good fit for my clients. And we ended up just kind of, coming together. And before I worked, with Appalachia, before I started Stronghold, I'd worked for a defense contractor for a little while. And prior to that, I'd worked at the White House Communications Agency for 12 years. So I'd spent a lot of time working in, buildings with no windows, surrounded by barbed wire, machine guns, and that kind of stuff. And I've seen some awfully strange things. I've been to some strange places. So when you work in these extreme security environments where you have secret, top secret, and then special access programs and these other things that you get read into, it kind of it changes the way you look at things,
right.
And your worldview and then security in particular. So I bring all that, kind of expertise into the fold with Appalachia, and that's the kind of stuff that we're, that experience that we're using to build out our cybersecurity programs, and serving our customer base.
Awesome. It's always good to have unique perspectives and seeing things from a different channel as well, probably particularly from the public sector versus the private sector, and seeing how that all works to be able to bring that to light too. So, John, why don't you talk a little bit about INA, what you guys do, and why you're here?
INA was formed in 1982 by a former FBI agent, and INA is a private investigative agency. We help protect people, property, and data. We're technically not a cybersecurity company, but we have a digital forensics division within INA, and the digital forensics is needed after companies experience a data breach. I always compare it to if your internal IT people or your first aid people, they're going to hand out Band-Aids and ice packs and so forth and keep your network going from that standpoint. Appalachian Technology comes in, they're the advanced life support, they're going to do CPR. INA is going to come in and actually do an autopsy. So we're going to tell you what happened after the fact and actually what was compromised, and also tell you who compromised it and try and trace back to figure out what happened and how it happened.
Well,
It's a lot.
yeah, it is a lot. Yeah, I was trying to make a joke, but then I thought, man, autopsies and jokes probably aren't the greatest
Glad
thing
that
to do.
we're on the CPR
Yeah.
side and not the
We have a dark
autopsy.
sense of humor.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
exactly
that's
the
true.
kind
John,
of
you
joke we
stay
would
over
tell.
there.
Yeah, stay on the morgue side. We're going to be over here.
Yeah, we're going to be over here with the living.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we maybe paint a landscape of some of the. Well, there's a lot of challenges. So we feel like we're constantly hearing about data breaches, and it's not just. I mean, it's massive corporations, and probably one of the biggest ones that seemed to trigger it all was one of our credit agencies having their data breached, and then it seemed like it was kind of a domino. But we got scamming, there's phishing, there's all sorts of issues that we're having to deal with. So what are you seeing as some of the maybe top concerns that businesses have to be worried about right now as it relates to cybersecurity?
Sure. I would say that the two things that most businesses need to worry about is a breach of data, so someone accessing their network and stealing out data from their company, and then also ransomware attacks, which are really rampant right now. They say that in general, about 1 in 5 small businesses experience a cyber attack of some sort during their tenure, and unfortunately about 60% of those actually go out of business within 6 months of having a cyber attack. So it is a major concern, but particularly for a small business, they usually lack the resources to be able to rebound from that because of the potential for litigation, the attorney fees, the regulatory requirements that they have to comply with. It can be quite expensive, and people always talk about the cost of cybersecurity, and I always say that if you think cybersecurity is expensive, try having a data breach or a ransomware attack.
So let's maybe dive in a little bit more and make that real world. So how are these? You mentioned ransomware and whatnot. How is that actually happening? What are the threats? If I'm sitting at my computer, how would I know that something like that is being attempted on me that I can try to be aware of?
Most ransomware attacks are introduced to a network through human error. And you can have the most sophisticated security program in the world, but if your employees click on a link or they plug in a USB drive with malware on it, they can contaminate your network. Most of it actually is through phishing emails and also through employees following links in emails or giving out too much personal information. So the bad guys, unfortunately, are incredibly sophisticated. They're going to use phishing in a variety of different ways. They're going to potentially send you an email and ask you for information. They're going to potentially call you on the phone and pretend to be an IT department from your organization. They also will try and get you to open an attachment to an email by making it look legitimate. All of those things can introduce malware to an organization, and once the ransomware or the malware is introduced, it can do a lot of different things. Most of the ransomware attacks are actually encrypting the data on the network, but the newer variants that we're seeing are actually exporting data. Then they're encrypting the data on your own network. So not only are they denying you the access to your data, but they're saying that if you don't pay the ransomware, they're going to publicly make that information available.
That's crazy. So, and you said they're getting more sophisticated. It seems like I'm constantly getting emails from what supposedly is Amazon or PayPal or what appear to be reputable organizations. They're using their logo. They're using what appear to be potentially legitimate email addresses and whatnot. But most of the times you should be able to sniff out something doesn't smell right, but I don't know, did you?
I'll jump in there.
Yeah.
I literally spoke with a business owner this week, and she provides services to other businesses, and smaller business, but she was on with QuickBooks support, she thought, and it was not QuickBooks support. She quickly realized that was an attack. So, shut things down and seeking help. So it's not just an email link that's coming through anymore. It is a legitimate, I'm reaching out for support. I Google it, and one of the support links is a bad guy. It's a bad actor.
Yeah.
So they're getting more sophisticated, and it's getting more and more difficult to identify them and take action or realize that you've been compromised.
what is the end game for these scammers with something like that, where you're talking about they're selling all the data, so they're getting information and selling that on a black market or a...
Trying to make a living just like the rest of us,
Yeah.
frankly. You know what I mean? And not to, couch it in those terms because it's criminal activity, but typically the motivation is simple as money. And they leverage the law of averages. I know that if I send phishing emails to enough people, if I send out 1,000 phishing emails and they're well crafted, some percentage is reliably going to open them. They know
Right.
that, right? And I wish that people really understood the gravity of this threat and kind of where it comes from. But what's interesting is they take advantage of jurisdictions, right? So the people that do this, they don't live in your community or in your country, in your state. So you would set up a shop in Eastern Europe or Latvia or wherever, right? And then you have a shop, and then it kind of operates like a legitimate business. They're going to have business development people and project managers and engineers and all this other stuff. And they have this criminal activity, it's organized crime, and the people that they're targeting are going to be somewhere in the United States or in Great Britain or France or whatever. And if they're smart, they keep their crimes small enough so as to not attract the attention of the FBI or Interpol or anything like that. So, say that you're, old lady living in a park or whatever, and then you lose $200 or something, you call your local police. They can't do anything about
Right.
that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I believe that the FBI, from what I understand, they don't get involved unless it's up to like $400,000 or something like that. There's some number, and it's a large number, so they could perpetrate fairly large crimes, right? So this is basically organized crime. They are not to be underestimated. They're very smart.
Yeah.
They're able to change their business model on the dime. They're interested in making more money. They're interested in scalability. They have all the same interests that a regular business owner does, really.
Yeah.
They operate in much the same way.
Just going about
But
it
it's
a
just,
weird way.
it's true. It's absolutely true. They have buildings, they have shops, they have engineers, they have all that stuff. They have payroll. It's just that their business, so to speak, is unlawful.
They say that ransomware alone is an $8 billion a year industry. $8 billion just in ransomware.
Wow. So is that all in the what they are able to monetize any of the either data or getting people to pay them to essentially release their data back to them or gain access to data? That is what's part of that $8 billion?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's probably understated because
Yeah.
a lot of companies don't report ransomware attacks.
Sure.
But for those who do have to pay the ransom to get their data back, not only do they get victimized once, oftentimes the organizations will reinfect their networks, or they'll leave code in there that won't be decrypted, and then they'll make them pay a second ransom or go after them for a second ransom. Oftentimes, too, the networks are not only legitimate business owners, as Jason was talking about, sometimes they're also state governments, or state-sponsored, I should say, foreign governments. North Korea, Iran, China, Russia, they all have very sophisticated cybersecurity programs, but they also have some of their programs are actually going out and trying to commit espionage and or trying to exploit money to keep their funding and their cybersecurity operations going. In some cases, it's actually the ransom that U.S. companies are paying are going to fund terrorism across the globe. A lot of terrorist networks are actually using this to fund their operations. Many of them move drugs. Many of them will be involved in sex trafficking, but many of them are also involved in cybercrime.
I wish that, and John, you'll probably speak to this too, that people don't understand this, but in countries like Russia and China and Iran, there's actually not a whole lot of space, shoulder room between organized crime and the state security services, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine that if in the United States that some people in the FBI work directly with the mafia in order to make money.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's inconceivable. Right. But in Russia, you have a situation like that where you would have the FSB or the SVR or whatever, and some of these guys are rotating between the Russian business network and those sorts of things. So they'll take these, these weapons-grade cyber weapons, right, out of that were developed by the state security services, and then they make their way out into organized crime, and then they use them to make money. So the size of the threat is just, I mean, what we're fighting here is just incredible.
Right.
And when you have a fairly, you think, keen understanding of it, even though you don't, it's amazing, baffling.
And sometimes they're actually putting bounties out. So if you're a U.S. defense contractor, the Chinese government may put a bounty out to local companies and say that if you can steal trade secrets or intellectual property from these companies, or you can access their network, they will offer a reward for doing so.
Wow.
And then they turn that information over to the government and they collect the bounty for it.
It's like the Wild West.
Then there's an asymmetric warfare component to this that's extremely sophisticated. And now I'm speaking to the defense industrial based stuff too, but they'll steal anything. They stole the recipe to white paint from DuPont, if you remember that. That was, China that had exfiltrated DuPont's recipe for white paint. But then there's also supply chain poisoning. And I'd read a case study where they'd gotten into a subcontractor that was 5 layers down from Electric Boat or General Electric or Boeing or something like this. And they went in there and they reformulated the formulation for some type of a plastic washer that was part of a valve assembly, that was part of a larger subassembly, that was part of a nuclear submarine. Right? So they get in there and they make a minor modification to a $10 part, and now we have a nuclear sub sitting in dry dock because of it. And if you think about it, it's absolutely brilliant. You didn't kill anybody, you didn't blow anything up, and now you have diminished capability because of it. That's what asymmetric warfare is. And they also do the same thing in regular industry, from what I've read. And this is conjecture, but I think that I believe possibly this is why the F-35 program is such a mess, is due to foreign meddling.
Yeah. Wow.
We're going a little bit down the rabbit
Right.
hole with that stuff,
Yeah.
so let's get it back
Yeah,
on track.
I'll bring
Yeah.
it back a little
I'm
bit.
the cloak and dagger
You-
guy. I scare the crap out of people.
That's good.
So.
That is
That's
all
good.
real,
Yeah.
and we have to deal with it. However, the flip side, if there is a flip side, for a nominal fee, anybody can go on the web, the dark web, wherever, and buy some hacking tools. They don't need to know how it works.
Yeah.
They don't need to understand it. They don't even need to know who they're going to attack.
Right.
They just fire this program up and say point and shoot,
Yeah.
and it can cause damage too.
Yeah.
So it is a broad spectrum.
Right.
It's prolific, and it's a concern
Yeah.
at every level, from state, nation, global, and our local community.
Right. Well, I was going to say, I mean, we've been talking a lot about much more grand
Yep.
exposure, and it's a fallacy. And we've had other discussions about this, but it's a fallacy to believe that my organization's too small. We're not a target, which is a complete lie. And so, are there? Well, we'll talk about some things that, just in general, that businesses or even individuals, because we're all even sitting here right now, I'm probably exposed in some way and could be doing some things to make sure that I'm not. But before we get into that, what are some warning signs that are just trigger points to see that I'm attempting to be phished or scammed or a ransomware attack or whatnot, that are obvious ones that and maybe it's just policies. Don't do this, don't click these, don't, whatever. They're basics that people should be avoiding, or dead giveaways that are triggering that it's probably something that's coming to try to get you.
Go ahead, Brad.
Either one, yeah.
I was going to start at the business level.
Yeah.
Not having a plan, not having documentation on your business continuity and how you're going to secure things and the policies. That's a start. That's where you need to start. Need to have that, and forever get better at it.
Yeah.
Security is a layer, right? It's a layer upon a layer. There's no 100%, right? Because the bad guys don't sleep. They're gonna develop new tools.
Yeah.
They're gonna have state sponsorship from foreign countries. We're gonna continue to chase it, but having no plan is a really bad idea. If you're not taking it serious at all, you're not taking it serious enough.
Yeah.
If you're not investing in some sort of plan to help protect your business or your personal assets, it's a scary thing because you will be compromised.
Yeah.
So want to bring it down another layer and get into the more technical stuff? That's
It's easy. Yeah.
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 Well, and I think that, as far as some of the warning signs, it's going to be very difficult to detect until some malware is actually acting up on the network. So oftentimes companies will see a slowdown in their network, they will see some problems with the way things are occurring on their network, or they may just get a black screen and a little message that is left on there to say, you've been victimized by a ransomware attack, call this number or email this address and we'll give you instructions of what to do next, and they'll demand a ransom. There is no company that is too big or too small. A lot of times they're just scanning the internet for open ports or computers connected to open ports, And if they get a response, they'll actually introduce malware and try and get in. They don't even know who most of the companies that they're going after are some of the time. They're just looking for things that are connected to the internet to try and get in. So the real critical part is to educate your employees with what to look for. Make sure that they know not to click on a suspicious email. Make sure that they know to make sure that they don't just follow a link that they find online, that they're actually looking at the email address and looking at what happens after the @ sign.
Right.
So it's after the @ sign that really matters, and what domain are they actually going to? Because they can spoof a domain to look like anything, but the reality is that what comes up is not necessarily what it is. So if they hover their mouse over the URL or the website address, it's actually going to come up with a box that says, where's this actually going to? Because sometimes it may just come up as a name or a company name. But if you hold the mouse over it, it will then tell you where to go. So the most important thing is educate your staff with what to look for. Look for those emails with attachments from people that you do not know, or look for something that is very suspicious. And if you're not sure, make sure that you contact your IT department and ask them before you click on anything. God forbid you do click on something and afterwards you say, I probably shouldn't have clicked that. Make sure that you unplug that computer from the network immediately and that you report it to the IT department so that they can take action immediately.
Okay.
But oftentimes you're not really going to know that anything's going on your network until it actually goes bad.
Right. Right.
I'm going to use that as a segue to describe briefly how, as a white hat hacker, we would attack our own client upon their request. So I'll tell you about a project that I did 2 or 3 years ago on a hedge fund, right? And it was a penetration test. And we did a bunch of reconnaissance, and we used a bunch of tools to scrape social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, job websites, all that stuff. We scraped the entire website to see what email addresses were exposed, what phone numbers were exposed. And then we downloaded an entire copy of their website, everything, every single bit of it. And I went to GoDaddy and we registered a copy of their domain, but I put an S on the end. Then I uploaded their entire website, an entire copy of it onto, with the S as the end. And then I used the email addresses that we'd retrieved to start copying their signatures. So I started emailing their company asking for questions about information, about, can you tell me about this product line, about these service offerings? And then finally I got an email back from the COO, and I then had the COO's email signature. So I used my fake website, and then I set up fake email, and I masqueraded as a COO. And then I emailed the entire staff based on the email addresses that I'd scraped from LinkedIn. And I told them that there was a security problem with our VPN, and that we needed everybody to log into their VPN right now to test it and then report the results back to me with my fake email address. So we set up a fake portal, and then within 45 minutes we captured, I believe, 30% of the staff's passwords, including the CFO. Now, if they'd had a simple thing like multi-factor authentication, which does not cost very much, that would have mitigated that. They weren't training their people. But from the time that I kicked the actual attack off to the time that I got into their network was maybe 45 minutes. And I'm a white hat, right? They hired me to do this. Imagine when, the bad guys are at it. And I tell you that story, and I tell that story to people all the time, and it makes their skin crawl. Like, why would you do that? I'm like, well, they paid me to do it. That's what we do.
Well, it's in a way it's a form of training where you're.
I think they got the picture after that.
Yeah. Wow. So are there some basic things? I was going to ask when you already brought up the idea of, well, oh crap, I accidentally clicked the link. What do I do now? And you said, well, the best thing to do if you figure that out is unplug from the network, because at that point they can't really get access anymore to at least your computer and whatever's on there. But are there, ahead of that, basic things, protocols, security measures, technology, software, whatnot, that you should be implementing in your organization and at the individual level to mitigate, in addition to having policies, manuals, training, and whatnot on best practices?
Yes, there are. One of the things Appalachia does as a service is they will actually set up domains and send bogus phishing emails to employees of the company, as Jason was explaining, as he did with the hedge fund. But they do that as a service. So you give them all of the email addresses of your employees, and I don't mean to speak for you guys can certainly explain it. But there are phishing programs out there where they send these phishing emails to your employees. if one of your employees falls for it, they immediately get a notice to say, this was actually a phishing email, and let's go through some remedial training right now about how you can actually avoid this happening from you when it's for real. And then they also get scored, and that score goes to the IT department, so they know the individuals in the organization are creating the greatest vulnerability. If they don't click on it, then they get a higher score. If they do click on those kind of things, they get educated and they also get told about it. There are also software tools that you can put on the network besides the firewall to help really prevent people from coming in. But there's also utilities that you can put on the network that would identify suspicious behavior on the network. So if a user is trying to elevate their access to the network, if they're accessing certain things on the network, if they're trying to access the root directory and other things on the network, there is software that will pick that up and notify the IT department that this particular user is doing something odd on the network. Some of that software will actually block them. Some of that will just send out an alert. But there is software that is out there. It's fairly inexpensive, but it is a higher level of security. What I would recommend to all businesses, if they're worried about their cybersecurity profile, and they should be, that the first thing they do is have a third party come in and conduct an independent network assessment. Understanding where your vulnerabilities are is the first step in anything. A company like Appalachia can come in and actually do an assessment. They'll scan the ports. They'll tell you which ports are open, which computers on your network do not have up-to-date software on them. They can give all kinds of reports of vulnerabilities on your network and then help you address a plan to actually address those vulnerabilities. But I would say that most of the vulnerabilities occur because people do click on those links or because people don't patch their networks. And we all know, especially if we have Microsoft machines, Microsoft and PCs are constantly updating. They have, usually the updates come out on Wednesdays, I believe it is, and the hackers have something called Hack Tuesday, because that's the day that the networks or the vulnerabilities are actually being released to the public. They're sitting on those, they're looking for the exploits, and then they're writing scripts specifically exploit the patches that Microsoft's trying to roll out. So it's a zero-day exploit, but as soon as the vulnerabilities are identified, the bad guys are looking at what Microsoft is trying to patch. But before the companies can actually go in and hack or fix those and install those patches, they're writing script to try and get the companies before they update. So it is very important to keep all the systems up to date, run good antivirus software on your computer as well, and make sure that somebody is monitoring for suspicious activity on the network.
Brian had mentioned you got to have a plan,
Yeah.
right? My dad used to say that all the time, you got to have a plan. He's right about that. And since we're talking to a lot of small business owners, the question is, well, what's the plan? Where do I get the plan,
Yeah.
right? And there's plans out there, and a lot of them are industrial grade or defense grade. But NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, has come out with a small business information security fundamental framework, and it's designed exactly for just some mom and pop shop, and they have a bunch of computers, and they got phishing. What do? We need to have some kind of plan, and that framework is called NISTIR 7621. And if you look that up and then start following that, it will give you a rundown of basic high-level things that and it's written, really kind of at a high level in layman's terms. It's not written for somebody like me or Brian or for John. It's written for, ordinary people like an automotive mechanic or a florist or whatever. And they could download that framework, and then there's a bunch of, I think maybe 21 points in it or something like that. And it will go over, these are the, I need to enumerate what I have, I need to patch my things, I need to trade my people, I need to do this with my firewall, so on and so forth. So for small business owners, I think that's a great start, and I agree with John too. If you could bring in a third party to do an assessment, that's best. But the saying that my grandfather used to say, you have to get up on the roof and nail the first shingle in, right? Same thing that Confucius said, the journey of 1,000,000 miles begins with the first step, but where do you begin? And I really think that for the small business that's kind of flapping in the wind and says, we don't have $10,000 to do this, that NISTIR 7621, I believe is the number, small business framework. Download it, read it, because it's written for you as a small business owner. It's designed for you.
Yeah, it sounds like a good potential starting point, even for some folks, just from an understanding level, just trying to have a basic idea of what they should be doing rather than just going to you guys and blindly saying, well, just do whatever you want. It's always helpful to at least have some idea of what the threats are and what the things are that you could be doing. And, you know, as you keep talking, the level of sophistication that is already there and is going to continue to be there. I mean, I heard just resounding evidence for you want to outsource this stuff. You want to have a third party who knows what they're doing, who knows how to guide you properly to set up your network, set up your protocols, get training in place for you to adequately protect you, because most of us are, well, you guys' everyday job is doing this, but most of us that are, me included and those that are watching, our daily job isn't IT and cybersecurity, but that's all these guys are doing, and that's a huge, huge threat. So, but great resource as well. That's awesome. We're going to publish that. We'll probably push that out on social media as a resource as well for people to be able to get access to.
And it's free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great story.
Unlike the ISO standards are not free, but the NIST standards are.
Okay, awesome. So we've talked a lot about just data breaches, malware, hacking, that kind of stuff. Are there other security threats that maybe in a more simple way? I'm thinking, and this isn't cybersecurity, but we've talked about physical security. You know, if you still have stored files, you still have computers, you know, things even like backing up your data, doing that kind of stuff. Are there threats out there that we should be thinking of as well as we're putting this overall plan together?
Absolutely, and I'm a physical security specialist, and I do assessments all around the world for companies. So physical security is my forte. But you know, I always tell companies too that you can have the best cybersecurity in the world, but all is for naught if somebody kicks in your door, steals the server, and walks away with your server. You know, all those firewalls and everything that are blocking the outside attacks all are useless if somebody just walks in and steals your server.
Yeah.
But yet most companies have very little and poor physical security measures at their organization. Most are not using encryption on their laptops and their computers. Laptops get stolen in the rate of 1 in 10. So they say at some point during their lifetime, 1 in 10 laptop computers get stolen. So think about all the laptop computers that are out there, particularly during COVID when everybody's working from home and everybody bought laptops and bringing them home. Think about how many of them are vulnerable to be stolen and to be exploited. Many of the data breaches that occur because someone left their computer in their car and they went in and stopped on their way home to have a drink with their colleagues, and somebody broke out the window of their car and stole their computer out of their car. Many organizations, including local government agencies, have actually been compromised just from that same scenario that I just said. So physical security has to be a part of the component as well, and that's a layered approach of having layers of security that need to be defeated in order for someone to actually access your network. But it becomes even more vulnerable when you do talk about from the user aspect. You know, having somebody walk around an office and turning over keyboards, turning over mouse pads, and making sure that somebody doesn't write the password down and tape it under there. And those of you who are out there are giggling, you know exactly who I'm talking about because you're probably one of them. But, you know, even those kind of things about educating the employees to do that, but then having somebody actually come around and do a physical security assessment to make sure that there's no physical security vulnerabilities within the network, areas where they can actually connect malware and intercept data, and also having a separate network from your guests versus your employees, a Wi-Fi network, so that people can't hack into your network through the Wi-Fi password that you give them and then be able to access data on there or introduce malware on there as well. In the old days, I used to be able to sell in front of a business and used to be able to access their Wi-Fi network, and oftentimes you can actually spoof it and get further access into the network itself. Nowadays, when we do penetration testing, physical penetration testing, most of the time what we'll do is we'll leave thumb drives around in the parking lot. And the first thing somebody does is they find a thumb drive in the employee parking lot and they assume it belongs to one of their coworkers. They want to be nice. They bring it in, they plug it into their computer to see who it belongs to. And when they do that, they've bypassed all the security network access, and they've introduced malware, which can shut down systems or can introduce ransomware attacks and other worse things into the network.
Why would you do that? It's like if you found a candy bar on the sidewalk, would you eat it?
You'd be surprised at how many people do it, though.
I know, and just do it because it works.
Yeah,
You know it works.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Any other commentary on that?
Yeah, like folks, this is complex. It's scary. But there are a lot of fundamental things you can do. John, Jason both spoke to them, but regular password changes, multi-factor or two-factor authentication. Like all your banks do it now.
Yeah.
Try to do some online banking with your phone. The odds are it's going to text you and you're going to have to punch in a code. That doesn't seem very complex, and it's getting easier to implement.
Right.
But the level of security that provides compared to not having it is exponential.
Yeah.
Is it end all be all? Absolutely not. But there are things that don't cost that much anymore, are not overly complex to implement or manage. Do some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And to Jason's point with the NISTer, document, that there's some fundamental things. Do regular password changes. Have the password to be a little more complex. Maybe have a password manager.
I was
Do
just
some
gonna ask about
multi-factor.
that. Yeah.
Do a bunch of little things that just increase your odds. Imagine the old days, the bad guys walking down the street and jiggling the door handle.
Yeah.
Your car's locked.
Right.
Doesn't mean they can't break the window or
Yeah.
pick the lock, but if the next one's open, they're had. So
Yeah.
make yourself a little harder to compromise.
Yeah.
And then, of course, keep going up that ladder until you feel like you're really safe, but do something, have a plan.
Hackers are notoriously lazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
gonna hit the softest targets first.
Yeah.
So you just have to outswim the other swimmers, so to speak, and let the shark eat your
You don't have to be
friends.
the fastest,
Be the
just
Phelps.
faster.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that? I guess you can say that. He's one of the greatest of
Sure,
all
chef.
time. Right?
Not swim the shrimp.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would have been a good connection.
And if I can add to what Brian said as well, is two additional things. Is one, think about whole disk encryption for your laptop computer. So even if somebody steals the computer, they can't access the data on it without encrypting it. And that's as easy as having two passwords when you log on. One to unencrypt the data, one to log on to your network. The other thing with that as well is make sure that none of your user accounts are elevated to administrator access. You need administrator accounts, but make sure those aren't the accounts that you use every day. Make sure that you have a user account with limited access that you use every day and use that for all of your functionality at work. And then when you need to do something on the network, you log out and you log in with your administrator password and access the network. And ask your IT people if they're doing that as well, because quite frankly, IT people get lazy as well. They do that so that they can do anything while they're in there without having to have the hassle of logging out and logging back in. They say that security and convenience are inversely proportionate to one another, so you can't have both. The more secure you are, the less convenient you are, and vice versa. So think about that if it's easy to change things on the network, then your account is probably elevated higher than it needs to be.
It's good stuff. All true. All right. I want to give each of you guys an opportunity to talk about. You've shared some great expertise here, given some valuable wisdom, but you also provide a service and a very valuable service. So I want to give each of you an opportunity to just talk about, well, how could you help an organization? What services could you provide? And maybe the best way for organizations or individuals to learn about you and get in touch with you. So, Brian, I don't know if you want to start
Sure.
with Appalachia and how you can help out.
Yep. So our website has a good amount of information, but nothing beats a face-to-face conversation or a phone call or a Teams or a Zoom, whatever that happens to be. We're practical, we're local, we're fighting a good fight alongside of everybody else here. There are many times that an opportunity is big enough that any one organization can't do it, and that's why Appalachia and INA have such a strong partnership. There are things that we just are not that good at, and that's what John and his team's expertise are, and vice versa. So, whether it's physical security or security assessments, penetration tests, system security plans.
Autopsies.
Yeah, autopsies.
Yeah.
Right. But that's
You
not
poke it with a stick.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's dead.
There is a lot to it. Normally, we like to start with a discovery or an assessment
Yeah.
to understand what the environment looks like. So the first step is, do you feel safe? Are you safe? Do you think you have everything in order? The odds are you don't, because we're all humans. We're all focused on our business, doing different things. Have a conversation. Explain your business. Explain what keeps you up at night, and we can start a dialogue. And typically, it's, as I said, like an assessment of what the environment looks like. And normally, there's some high,
Right.
concerns
Right.
that we can say, well, let's prioritize these, address these, you do it, we do it as a team, and then it ends up being a multi-month or a multi-year plan on how you continue to get better.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else in life. There's not a magic wand,
Yeah.
and there isn't a one thing that, unlimited budget, you sign here, and you're magic, and you are completely safe forever. doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's a longer-term plan, strategy, partnership that we learn and grow together.
So you mentioned your website, that you got some information on there. What is your website, and is that the best way then for somebody to get in touch, to schedule some sort of consultation?
It's easy, right?
Okay.
AppalachiaTech.com.
Okay.
Easy way to find it. There's an 800 number. There's plenty of methods too. There's info, right, Carrie? There's a lot of ways to at least gather some.
Yeah.
Here's me, and I have some questions. Who do I talk to?
Yeah.
You could give out your personal cell phone number right now.
I can do that.
You could do that.
What's yours?
You want to give your password too, Brian?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
ABC 123.
Social security number.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, John, why don't you talk a little bit about INA and how organizations or people can get in touch with you guys, learn about you, and possibly work with you guys.
Thank you. INA has been in business for a long time, almost 38 years now. INA is a licensed private investigative agency, and as I said in the beginning, we protect people, property, and data. So we work with organizations to help them to protect all three. We have three major profit centers within the company. We have an investigative division within the company. Our investigative division is most helpful for employee misconduct interviews. So if you have problems with employees, theft of trade secrets, bust-out scams, individuals doing things that they shouldn't be doing, we can come in and assist with that. Within our investigative section, we have a fully equipped digital forensic lab. We can bypass most passwords with that. We can analyze computers, cell phones, networks, tell you what people have been doing on those devices, and oftentimes we can also bring back information that most people think are deleted and are actually deleted. And then we also have a security division. We have about 200 people in our company overall. Our security division does physical security, mostly armed work, but we do some unarmed work as well to help protect people and property. We do a lot of hostile terminations for companies as they're terminating employees and need someone there because of the risk of workplace violence. We also do physical security assessments for companies. We come in and tell them how they can decrease the likelihood of both an outside attack, but also from the risk of workplace violence and active shooter situations and so forth. And then we have a risk intelligence division that monitors for brands and companies and names of executives out on social media. We have about 20 full-time intelligence analysts that do nothing other than monitor social media and the internet for mentions of our client, and then we do reports back either by industry or client-specific reports to tell them about whether or not somebody's planning a boycott of their company, or whether or not someone's targeting their executives, or worse. So INA can be reached at, our website is www.ina-inc.com, INA Incorporated, or you can reach me. My personal email is jsancenito@ina-inc.com.
Awesome. And Jason's personal cell phone number is?
You know, I have a parting point I want to bring up real quick. And private investigators are different because private investigators have a license, right?
Correct.
IT and cybersecurity, for the most part, are completely unregulated, right? So if you go to get your hair cut, get tattoos, get your nails done, get your taxes done, get a will done, you go to your doctor, you go to your dentist, all those things, right? Those, you go to get pizza, right? Every single one of those things is licensed by the government. They're inspected, they're this or that. I have no government license. Brian has no government license. And to do cybersecurity, you don't require any kind of a government license. So the burden of that research lies on the consumer. So if you're reaching out to a company like Appalachia or IANA, you have to look up their staff yourself, right? And then see what kind of expertise they're bringing to the table. And one of the main reasons why I came on with Mike and Brian was because they were not shy about hiring talent. I saw some of the people that they had on their staff, and I was surprised. And people with master's degrees, certifications and all this other stuff. But you'll see people that are kind of basic IT practitioners, and they're trying to get into security. And legally speaking, there's nothing to stop them from doing that, right? Legally speaking, supercuts could offer cybersecurity if they wanted to. They could be supercuts and cybersecurity. They could do that, and legally that would be fine. If we wanted to be Appalachian Technology and haircuts, then they would, that would be. We can't give tattoos. That would be legal. We can't make hoagies. We can't do any of that stuff. But a hoagie shop could do cybersecurity. So that burden of due diligence in that case lies on the consumer. So it's really important to when you call up your IT company or cybersecurity people, say, explain to me how it is that you're qualified to do this work for me. Tell me. And that's a completely reasonable question, absolutely reasonable. And I know that we can sock that one out of the park every time, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, and
That's a
if
great
I can
point.
expand upon that for a minute, I
Yeah.
think when you're talking about your traditional IT guy within your organization, most IT people are excellent at troubleshooting, but they're not experts in cybersecurity.
Right.
So, cybersecurity is so specialized, it's sort of like going to a general doctor versus going to an ear, eyes, nose, and throat doctor.
Mm-hmm.
They specialize in what they do, and I think that's the difference between Appalachia and a lot of the regular IT people, if you will, that are out there. So if the same person is fixing your computer or selling you a new monitor, and then they're telling you that they can go in and set up your entire IT security network, I'd be a little suspicious of that.
Yeah.
Go to people that are highly qualified. Likewise, I can't tell you the number of times we were brought in, the IT guy says that the data's deleted, I can't get it, it's gone forever, and somebody will bring it to me, and 10 minutes later, we've recovered it. And they're
Yeah.
not experts in all things. They're not experts in cybersecurity. They're not experts in digital forensics. So make sure that you actually find people with those special skill sets if you need them.
Awesome.
I agree with John, but I compare us to proctologists rather than.
Well, I didn't want to go there, but okay.
So, well, an IT guy's like a doctor, but in a cyber guy's, that's like a proctologist. You become a doctor, and then you become and it's invasive and it's unpleasant, and it's an invasive and it's unpleasant. But,
You want to change sponsors?
Yeah.
But it's true though, because I've many times, I'm sure that you too have seen things. You're like, I really wish I had not seen this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's
Every day.
borderline criminal things. You're like, ooh, this has a reporting requirement. I've seen that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. That's great advice. Not sure where to take that last one.
No, we can.
That's a
we're
great, yeah,
good.
that's a, I think it's
We
time
can
to
leave
wrap
that
it
where
up.
it is.
Yeah, now,
More, I hope.
but Jason, Brian, John, thank you guys so much for coming and sharing some of your expertise. And again, everybody at home, they just did a fantastic job. I think what we might do as well is we're going to carve out your individual talking points there at the end and make sure to push that out after the show so that people have just a snippet of what you guys can do and what you can offer. Because if you're looking for organizations in this area to help you out, these are the two organizations that you want to have on your list. So if you have questions, be sure to reach out to these guys. Everybody, thank you so much for being here, for all the hard work that you do and fighting the good fight, and keeping all these lazy schmucks that are overseas from infiltrating our networks and keeping us all safe here. So again, thank you all so much. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks
Awesome.
for having us.
And everybody at home, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'll do a quick pitch. If you like what we're doing, like this video, share it. Make sure to check out our Instagram page. Go to our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/CentralPA for all these episodes. And we'll see you on our next episode of the Central PA Shrimp Tank. See ya.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. But it's